This is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Little Bow Gift Bag, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description where you will find a link to the written pattern and supplies you need, as well as both right and left-handed video tutorials for this pattern. To make this pattern, you'll need a USK 6.5mm hook. This one happens to be by Susan Bates, and you'll also need 75 yards of Red Heart Super Saver. I used 2 colors here for a pretty holiday look, but of course you can use whichever colors you like. Approximately even amounts of 2 colors, or if you want to make it all in 1 color or do some stash busting, you can really get creative with this pattern. As you can see, it makes this small gift bag, so let's take a quick look at the Little Bow Gift Bag together. In here you can see the Little Bow Gift Bag a little bit closer. We start at the bottom with a flat rectangle worked in rows, and then we build up the sides with simple stitches, single crochets and half double crochets. The real fun comes at the top where I've attached this bow. We do make the bow separately and then sew it on right here to the inside of the bag. You can see opposite the bow is this little chain and skip stitches hole that we've made. So you can fill up your pretty little gift bag here with whatever you like to give, gift cards or small treats, and then simply slide that bow right through the opening, and it holds the gift bag closed and finishes it off. I've also included this great little loop, great for hanging or attaching to other items, but you can skip the loop if desired. One important thing to note about the Little Bow Gift Bag is that the yarn is held doubled throughout. That means you work with 2 strands as if they were 1 strand as you crochet the pattern. If you're working with 1 skein, you can pull from both ends, or you can pull from 2 skeins at once, whatever works best for you. We start with a slip knot, just as we do for most crochet patterns. You can see I'm just holding these 2 strands together just as if they were 1 strand of yarn. Then we're going to start by chaining 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. As you can see, you do have to take a little bit extra care and time to make sure you're grabbing both of those strands in every stitch. Then we're going to skip the chain closest to the hook and single crochet in each remaining chain until we get to the end. So that will give us a total of 7 single crochets. So I've skipped the one that was closest to the hook, and now I'm just putting a single crochet in each chain across. I like to work into this back hump of the chain, but you can work into whichever part of the chain you like best. So now we've finished row 1 and we have 7 single crochets. So for rows 2 through 6, which are all the same, we're going to go ahead and turn and chain 1 and then simply single crochet in each stitch across. So continue making single crochet rows until you have a total of 6 rows made. So now we have 6 rows of single crochet with 7 stitches in each row. So now we're going to switch from making rows to making rounds, and we're going to work all the way around this little rectangle we've made. So for round 7, we start with a chain 1 and turn, and we're going to make a single crochet in each stitch, just as we've been doing before, but we're not going to stop there. So let's get our 7 single crochets in this row. And if you'd like, this is the point where you can also bring in some stitch markers. I think I'll go ahead and grab a couple here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and since I'm working in rounds now, put a stitch marker right in that very first stitch. That way, as I come back around, I'll know that that's the stitch to join to, and that will also be a little bit helpful as we come around, and I'll show you what I mean when we get there. So now I'll just finish off this row part of our round here, just as we were doing before. There we are. So now I've just single crocheted across. It looks like 7 rows, but now we're going to turn and single crochet down the side. So if you'll recall, we had 6 rows, and we want to put 6 stitches down the side. So that means 1 stitch per row. Now, the tricky part is we don't want to work into the side of the row or round that we're actually making. We need to make sure that we come down to the side of that actual row that we're working into as we begin working down the side here. Now, normally when I work into the sides of rows, I like to try and pick up 2 strands along the side here. But since we're working with our yarn held doubled, we don't have to worry about picking up 4. You can still pick up just 2 if you like. Or you can do it however you like, whatever looks best to you. But you just want to take your time and try and work 1 stitch in the side of every row. So I've done the first 3. I've got 3 more to go here. So I'll just get into this one here. And where exactly you stick your hook really is up to you. It's a matter of what you like best as you're crocheting. So I've come up to the side of this last row here. So I'm going to go ahead and get one right in the side of the very first row I made. There we are. So now we've worked our 7 stitches across the top, 6 stitches across the side, and now we need to work across the bottom of that foundation chain. So I'm just going to get those ends right on out of the way. And now we work into the bottom of each of those stitches from the first row. So if you worked into under those top 2 loops, you might just have 1 loop to work into here. But since I worked under that back hump, I've got the other 2 loops that I can go into. Gives me a really nice look. It makes it a little easier. It's one of the reasons I enjoy that technique. But right now we're just single crocheting in each stitch across the bottom of the foundation chain. And as you might guess, as we come here to this last side, we're going to need to, oh, see what happened there? I dropped one of my strands there. So I need to redo that stitch. There we go. Now we're at that final side. So we need 6 stitches up this side. Again, we want to make sure that we don't work into the side of the round we're making. So we come to that next row. And then as we come up, that we don't accidentally work into the side up here of this row or round that we're making all the way around. We want to make sure that we just get those 6 rows along the side there. So again, we're just going to take our time and make those 6 stitches up the side of our little rectangle. So now I've worked those 6 stitches down the other side here. You can see I didn't work into the side of the round we're making. And I'm going to go ahead and take one more stitch marker and mark my last stitch of the round. This will help us as we build up the sides of our bags so we don't accidentally mistake a slip stitch for a stitch. And that's the last thing we need to do to finish up round 7 here, is just slip stitch to the very first stitch that we made there. And you can see now it really wants to kind of curl up this way. We want to be working from the outside of the bag, so we can simply flip it around, turn it basically right side out. It's kind of like any other sock or bowl. If it starts turning the other way on you, you just flip it around the other way. But we want to have those ends on the inside where we can weave them in later. So with that, we're now ready for round 8. And round 8 and round 9 are very simple. Chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch around. So you just chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch. I do recommend that you go ahead and move that stitch marker up to the first stitch of every round. Oop. Sometimes they don't want to come out once you've got the stitch in there. So if you need to take it out beforehand, you can. There we go. Get straightened back out there. But as I was saying, I do recommend that you move that stitch marker up to the first and again to the last stitch of every row, just to help you keep track and keep your stitch count. Make sure you have 26 stitches in each of these rows for rounds 8 and round 9. So just single crochet around for rounds 8 and 9, and I will see you when we get to the end of round 9. So here we are at the end of round 9. You can see those sides of our little bag are really starting to form up here and it's starting to come together. But I haven't joined with a slip stitch yet. And that's because for round 10, we want to switch to our color B. I'll be using white. And again, I have those strands held doubled. So I've got that just sitting and waiting for me here so that I can finish up this round with that new color for the cleanest color change. If you prefer, you could actually cut the colors and actually switch colors every time you change colors. I like to carry them along the inside this way so that I get, I have fewer ends to weave in at the end. So I've put my hook in there, and this is where I would normally yarn over and pull through for a slip stitch, but this is where I'm going to drop that color and pick up my white color or my color B here. And now I'm going to go ahead and just make that slip stitch with my new color. There we are. So now I'm all set up to make round 10. So to make round 10 with our color B, we're going to simply chain 1 and half double crochet in each stitch around. Gone ahead and moved that first stitch marker out of the way there since it wants to be in my way today. And at this point, I'm just going to go over those ends a little bit. I'm not going to just crochet over them. I will weave them in when I'm all done, but I want to make sure that they're tacked down for now. However, I've noticed I only pulled up one strand, so let's do that again. There we are. I've got my chain 1. I'm going to yarn over, make sure I've got both strands there. Go in there, make sure I'm hooking both of those, pull it up, and finish my half double crochet. Then I'll go ahead and mark this one as the first stitch for this round. In the meanwhile, I'm going to just let that color A, or the red color basically, hang out in the inside so I can pull it back up for another stripe. But if you want to switch and cut it off, you can do that and weave in those ends as well. Then you can use lots of colors for your bag. But basically, for round 10, I'm going to go ahead and get those ends out of the way now. We're just going to half double crochet in each stitch around. Before we were working in single crochets, now we've got half double crochets. So for row 10, or round 10, I should say, we half double crochet in each stitch around and then join with a slip stitch just as we were doing before. Round 11, same thing. Chain 1 and half double crochet in each stitch around. However, at the end of round 11, that's when you switch back to color A. Or if you want to switch colors to something else, that's where you switch colors again. You can see here, when I'm crocheting right now, round 10, get that out of the way a little bit here, is right there. A simple round of half double crochet, another round of half double crochet, but then I switched back to color A for a few more rounds of single crochet. So that is basically the simple part of making this pattern. It's not until you get to the top, that very last round, that we've got our chain and skip and that we've got our loop. And then we make our bow separately. So simply follow the pattern, making those stripes in order. So looking at our written pattern, you can see here, there's round 10 and round 11 that we did with color B. Then we switch back to color A. 12, 13, and 14 are all in color A. Then we switch back to color B. Round 15 is in color B. That would be this first white round at the top here, this one right here. And then round 16 is where it gets interesting. So let's go ahead and make that together now. So we're going to say on our little sample here that it's time for round 16. So to make round 16, we start with a chain 1 and we half double crochet in the first 6 stitches. So we go right back in that first stitch, the one we slip stitched to. I already got my stitch marker out of the way for that one, but I'll go ahead and move it up here real quick. There we are. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then what we're going to do is chain 20 or to the desired handle length. Now, because I'm making a shorter abbreviated version right here and crochet seams do have a lean to them, mine isn't exactly lined up on our little sample here. On the full-size one, when you've made all the rows, you should come to the middle of the back for that chain 20. You can see right there. If I have to open it up here a little bit. Let me pull this bow back through. There we go. You can see how the lean of that seam helps determine where that loop and all of it is going to end up in this row. So you do need to make all the rows to get this in the right place. If you have changed the number of rows, if you're making this for a taller item or perhaps for a shorter item like this, you may need to adjust where we make this chain loop and then where we do these skips. And you can use some stitch markers to sort of plot that out for yourself for your own custom project. But as written, we half double crochet 6 and then chain 20. So we'll go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, and 20. There we go. You didn't need to see me count out to 20 there, but now we've got a long chain of 20. So now we just want to make sure that it hasn't gotten twisted at all. We want to make sure our stitches are nicely lined up here. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch in the last half double crochet made. So what does that mean? That right there is that last half double crochet we made. I don't want to come from the top. That would cause some twisting in our loop. So I'm going to go under those top 2 loops, but I'm going to wrap my yarn right around the side of the stitch here for that slip stitch. There we go. So now you can see my loop is nice and straight and doesn't really have a twist in it. After that, we half double crochet in the next 11 stitches. So we've got our slip stitch there. We just come right back down to that next stitch and half double crochet in the next 11 stitches here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 11. There we go. So now what we're going to do is make the opening that the bow comes through. If you're switching out your bow for a big button, you may need to adjust the size of this a little bit, depending on the size of the button you're using. So right now I'm going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's okay to go ahead and make those tight, just like the ones for the loop. We're not going to be working back into those. But then we want to make sure to skip 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then half double crochet in each remaining stitch. And there should be 5 half double crochets left. So there's 1, 2, 3. It looks like we're going to land right back in that marked stitch, so we know we're in the right spot. Let me try that one again there. Sometimes when you're working with the 2 strands held together, it can be a little stiffer, but that's kind of what we want for this bag. That's why we're doing it. So we get a really nice stiff bag that sort of stands up on its own and doesn't give away what's inside. So now we're in the last stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and set that stitch marker aside because now we are all done with this part of the bag. We have our loop. We have the point that our little bow will come through when we sew that on. So we can go ahead and break our yarn and weave in these ends after, of course, we finish off this row with a slip stitch or however you like to join those together. And then all we have left to do is make the bow and add it on. So to make the bow, we've gone back to color A, our red color, and we start again just as we did with the bag itself, with the yarn held doubled and with a chain of 8. We skip that first chain closest to the hook and make sure to put a single crochet in each chain across. So just as before, we want to end up with a row of 7 single crochets. So I'll see you when we get to the end of row 1 of our bow. Rows 2 and 3 for the bow are exactly the same. We chain 1 and turn, or turn and chain 1, however you like to do it. Half double crochet in the first 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and 3. There we are. Then single crochet in the next stitch. And then half double crochet in the last 3 stitches. So that's how we make row 2, and then we do that again for row 3. So I'll see you when we get to the end of row 3. So this is what your bow should look like at the end of row 3. Row 4, as it turns out, is exactly the same, but at the end we're going to break our yarn, leaving a really long tail that we can use to attach our bow to our project. So once again, we want to chain 1 and half double crochet in the first 3 stitches, single crochet in that center stitch, and then half double crochet in the last 3 stitches. Go ahead and make those single crochet stitches in the center really nice and tight, and that will help pull the center of your bow together. So I'm almost at the end here of row 4. So we'll go ahead and finish this off here together. Like I say, we want to make sure to leave a really long tail. So by a long tail, what does that mean? We want to leave a lot more than the 6 inches we'd want to normally use to weave our ends in with. For this, I would say at least a foot. If you've got the yarn, a little bit extra never hurts. Then you can go ahead and cut both strands together here. And then you do want to go ahead and take the time to weave in these short ends at the beginning, and then we'll use these long ends to finish assembling our little bow gift bag. So now we're ready to finish off our bow and add it to our bag. I wove in those short ends from where we began, but I took those long ends and threaded them on my yarn needle and wove them in just basically right there till they're in the middle. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fold the center of our bow in sort of an S shape. So you want to do it in the middle, but I'm going to show you here along the edge where it's a little easier to see. Just sort of fold it up right like that so that it's all squished together, and you can kind of see that little S shape right there, or a Z shape, depending on how you decided to fold it, whatever your fingers wanted to do. This way works just as well, whichever you prefer. But we just want to get that fold right there in the middle. You can see right there, I've pinched it together with my fingers. Again, it doesn't matter which direction you go, N or Z, S or Z, however you want to think about it, they all work. But now we're going to take those yarn ends and just wrap them right around really tightly the center of that bow a few times until it feels good and secure. And you can really give those a tug. Don't be afraid. This is Red Heart Super Saver. It's not going to fall apart. So we want to just give those a really good tug. And as you can see here, it creates a really nice center for our bow. And now it really looks like a bow. So how are we going to secure that? I'm going to go ahead and take that yarn needle with those yarn ends, and I'm just going to really weave in the ends here around what we've wrapped around the center of our bow. We just want to make sure that this isn't going to open back up. So I want to take a few stitches right around there and also catching some other threads underneath until I feel like it is nice and secure. There we are. So now our bow is ready to add to our bag. So here's our little sample bag, and right there is that chain 4, skip 4 opening that our bow will come through. So that means we want to sew our bow to the inside of the bag directly underneath that chain 20 loop. So if you skipped that loop, you can just kind of fold your bag and find the spot right there opposite that opening. That right there is where we want to sew our bow. So we're simply going to go ahead and take our ends, find the spot where we want to attach it, and start sewing it on. And you can take a few different stitches, kind of whip stitches like I've been showing here. I do recommend that you try and be careful to not get those stitches to show on the outside, unless of course you're using the same color here as you did for that last stripe. But you just want to go ahead and sew that on. Oop, I'm going to try that again there. There we go. Sew that onto your bag just as tightly as you can so it's nice and secure. Then you can weave in all your ends and you will have finished your little bow gift bag. And that's how to crochet the little bow gift bag. Don't forget to check the description for links to both right and left-handed video tutorials, the written pattern, and all the supplies you need. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.